Okay. Right now we're broadcasting, and it's just about the hour. So meanwhile, let's just, like I said, give them a couple of minutes. They're not that punctual. So, these are engineers, so they're always like doing their thought.
Time to find a new team. Engineers aren't precise. Time to find a new team. No,
right. Exactly. Okay. So, oh, by the way, two things. I just want to make sure that I pronounce your last name right. So how do you pronounce it?
Well, I want to hear how you pronounce it. We'll go back and forth.
I would say Passoja, but I don't know if that's right.
That's a very Spanish way to do it. It's Passoja.
Passoja. Okay, great. So you see, that was useful.
If I can tell you how many Mexican comedians have brought me on stage going, next, Erik Panocha. Oh boy.
Uh-oh. You would, that's something that you're not going to hear in this venue.
There we go. Yeah, Passoja.
Passoja, Erik Passoja. Okay, that was one thing. Now, at the end, when we finish the broadcast, and then you and I you can just let me know. We send all our participants a few tokens of appreciation, and cups and things, a few goodies. So you, at your convenience, just let me know where I can send them by courier.
Sure, absolutely, by courier. Nice.
Yeah, by DHL or something.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you send it from Juarez? There are a couple extra things I want. I'm joking.
Sure. Well, if it's within my reach and within my budget, yeah, sure, why not?
Thinking about Juarez, as you know, someone's going to send something by courier from Juarez. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's see. Okay, we're going to start the broadcast because either way, like I said, they're going to start popping in, and it's going to be in there. It's going to remain there, recorded, so that anyone can watch it at any given time.
Gotcha.
Okay, but we're broadcasting live from the offices of Nearsoft here in Mexico City, and we have as a featured guest speaker, Erik Passoja. Erik is the president of a company by the name of Sevent Planet Inc., and he's also an entertainer in LA. And I'm reading out of his LinkedIn profile as well. So here's a whole bunch of things like actor, stand-up comedian, writer, director, you name it. So, and also, Erik is going to be talking about client-centered approach to web development. Okay, so, and Erik, from this point on, I'm going to pass on the mic to you, and I really want to thank you for having agreed to being here with us today. And the mic's all yours, and then you can do your thing, introduce yourself, and then it's all yours. Thank you, Erik.
My pleasure, Carlos.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Again, as Carlos mentioned, my name is Erik Passoja. I live in Los Angeles, and I run, among other things, I run a web development firm here. I have been doing this since 1999, and that was pretty much when the web started. So my formal education was actually in theater and psychology. And once I emerged into the workforce after college, I started learning design, actually, whether it was Photoshop, Illustrator, Quark, which was the ubiquitous program at the time. And I really knew how to do web graphics, and did that at Citibank for quite some time. And when I moved to Los Angeles from New York, where I was, I just started designing for the web. At the time, there was nothing. In fact, in 2000, I designed a website that won a Golden Web Award, and I would be embarrassed to show it to you right now because it's changed so much. Things have changed so much. It's less than 640 by 480, and everything was very graphics driven. And so for the past 16 years, I've been running a small web development firm in Los Angeles, and things have been going very well. And I attribute the success of the company to a very client-centered approach. Now, what does that really mean? I think, I approach everything from what I call a spiritual aspect. If you look at where we're hanging out, it's called a dojo. And having had a lifetime of the martial arts, dojo in Japanese means way place, a place where we study the way. And the way for me, in terms of web development, it starts with a truly client-centered approach. Now, let me get to that for you. I'm going to share my screen with you. If I can get this up here, I got the second button, and I'm going to share this one. Yay. Okay, hold on. Are you getting my screen, Carlos?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're getting it loud and clear.
Great. So you got my screen, you got my first slide, right?
Yes.
Great, perfect. Okay. The way I look at it is I plan a website, I create a website, and I pivot the web solutions to fit a client's site goals. Now, my firm, we do small to boutique size websites, and it's front end and functionality built into an HTML browser. Now I know many of you may be into software development, and my company, we deal with boutique to mid-size websites. But I believe that even if you're doing a multi-million-dollar solution, whether it's web design or an app or a handheld app, it's really the same paradigm. So let me sort of approach how I look at everything. The question is, first of all, how do clients come to you? Now, in my case, I'm almost entirely referral-based. One of the big tripping stones I find when developing software or front end, which actually we do software as well, but is being found on the internet, which is kind of like being punched in the face by a big slab of meat. The question I usually get is, I have a site, I want to do it for $600 and it's 23 pages. Can you do it? And I go, nope. So the first thing I do is I run a mostly referral-based business. And the reason I have a successful referral-based business is because I have a client-centered approach. So the first thing that happens when a client comes to me is it's really important for me to know about their business. People often say they need websites, but quite frankly, they don't know why. They say, oh, someone says I need a website, or I need to sell something, or I just want to kind of have people know that I'm around, or I want to create a solution for people and I want it all to be here. But they don't exactly know why. None of those are reasons. And here's what I mean. I have clients from many different kinds of business, whether it's entertainment, it's legal, it's education, and it's banking. And when I look at my client's business, the first thing I try to do is determine what their site goals are. Why do they need a website? A lot of people don't know. And in tandem with that, I try to figure out what is their investment in the site. And I'm not just talking about financial, and whether it's a piece of software you're developing, try to find out what their overall business model and their current business is. What's their financial model? How are they getting income? What are their expenses? And what are their visions for it in the future? And how does that mesh with a website? So I kind of take them by the hand at this point. And I try to figure out, okay, fine, you are an educational company and you want to sell workbooks and you want to get more students. Great, that's a cycle that we can put together. And then I try to figure out how to funnel the use of that interface and that functionality to create a solution they need. And I find that by that point, I generally have a client. A lot of the web developers I know say, okay, what do you need? All right, I'll go do it. In construction, which I worked when I was about 14 years old, they always said measure twice, cut once. As far as I'm concerned, the first phase of doing a website is about 80% of the work. It is. It's about 80% of the work because most people who need a website have no idea what they're doing or why. Whoops, can I make this bigger? Yes, I can. All right. And it's getting smaller. Are we okay with that? Is it legible, Carlos? Carlos, you with me?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, it's
okay, great.
Yeah, it's readable. Yeah.
So here's the big tripping stone I run into when I talk to someone. The first question they ask me is, "Okay, great. Fred Johnson introduced us. I hear you're great at making website. What's your website?" So www.seventhplanet.net. By the way, you can check that out if you want. It's my portfolio site. They asked me, the first real question they asked me is, how much is a website? And the first thing I ask them right back is, well, how much is a house? And they say, oh, well, it really depends on how many bedrooms, what neighborhood. And I say, exactly. And they say, okay. The other question I get is, can you do a site in HTML5? Which to me is a red flag. Let me explain. I see there are three kinds of people out there, and they all have their merits. One is a person who knows everything about the web and coding and technology, and those people are fine because they can tell me exactly what they want. They're pretty fluent and conversant, and we can work together to get a solution they need. The other person knows nothing. You know, maybe they're a psychiatrist. I have a couple clients who are psychiatrists. Maybe they're an educator. Maybe they have a store, and they have had a location and a place and a business for a long time, and they hardly know how to use their cell phone. What they do is they completely trust you to move forward, and that's a great kind of client too, because I tell them, hey, your job is to know your business. My job is to help you deal with the web stuff, and you don't need to know anything. But we'll walk together hand in hand, and we'll figure it out. The third kind of client, although they have their merits, is the kind that knows just enough to drive you crazy. And that's the kind of person who says, hey, can you do a WordPress site for me? Or I want to do a Joomla site. And I always kind of tell them to rewind a little bit and say, okay, let's figure out the real kind of site you need, the kind of solution you need before we build it. Because you can say you want a house made out of wood, but if you happen to be in the middle of the city where there's skyscrapers everywhere, that might not be a good solution. So, okay, another thing nipping at the butt, I hear this all the time. Hey man, I got this site half done in India. They didn't finish. Can you finish it for me? And my answer, I always say no. I can't because, you know, I'll be frank with you. I've worked with a lot of offshore teams, and because I'm talking, you know, with you, Carlos, and with people who actually work for an offshore team, I'm sure you've experienced this before, and hopefully something I can say can pique your interest in with your business model as well.
Yeah, we've definitely heard the India argument before. So.
Oh yeah, I hope you have, because it needs to be brought up, especially when you're developing software. But I found this in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, many different places, and I've had dozens of coders and teams from these places. So I know from experience. Here's my analogy: if you ask an American coder to clean off a bookshelf, the first thing they're going to say to you is, "Okay, where do you want the books?" Right? If you tell a coder from Bangladesh to clean off your bookshelf, you're going to come home, you're going to find books in your freezer, in your oven, under your pillow, on your roof, and there's still going to be books on your bookshelf. And I don't think it's an incompetence issue. I think it's a cultural issue. And I think it stems all the way back from a socio-religious standpoint in terms of a caste system. If you're a worker, your job is to do what you're told and to not ask questions. And so one of the things I've always been absolutely adamant about is clear communication. And I will say this goes across, if you do one thing right in your business when you're dealing with any kind of software development, communication is primary. So, for example, if I have an Indian team and a site is due on Friday, I tell them it's due the Thursday before. Okay, and that's a shift in communication, but I know I'm going to get it back and there are going to be books on my roof, so I need to deal with it. But that's the only way I can communicate with my client and deliver it to my client on time. And I will go back and forth, and you see this hairline? Yeah, that's how that happens. That between that Thursday and the following Friday, I am scrambling to get this site up in a decent shape to look at. So if someone got a site half done in India, it's very clear to me that the communication was and I will have to look through thousands and thousands of lines of code that weren't done programmatically, but that were done by hand, step by step, repetitively, and try to pull it apart and figure out what they did. And it inevitably costs more money than if we started over. So if you do work at an American company, I do want to say the most important thing you can do is be crystal clear in your communication, if you can, on a daily basis. Say, hey, Fred, this is what we did today. This is what we're looking at. We're ahead of schedule, or we're on schedule, or I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to be a little behind schedule, and this why. Shoot it in an email, shoot it in Skype, tell them why, and communicate clearly with them. If you want to keep that client and work with them on numerous jobs, communicate clearly. And this is not really done as much in the other countries I talked about. I've had so many times someone say to me, "Oh, Erik, I'm very sorry. We are closed for 7 days because of an Indian festival." You're closed for 7 days, and I found this out the second day into the festival. So don't, when you're working with these teams, which is fine, you can. Certainly they charge pennies on the dollar, but it comes out in your hairline. You need to find out on a regular basis what the situation is, and you need them to check in with you every morning. But the short answer is, if a team has already done half the site, I generally won't pick it up. The next one I get is, I had someone design this for me, can you code it? And I actually have no problem with it, but one cannot ask me that question and ask me how much it's going to cost in the same paragraph. And here's what I mean. I need to see all the designs. And usually in this case, when I see a design, it's not the whole site. It's like, oh, we did a few pages of the site, just kind of do the rest. And because my role for many years has been as a project manager, a site architecture specialist, and a designer, I know what the coders need to see. And in order to quote something, if someone else has designed it, I have no problem with that. I also see, oh, are there gradients in the background? How is Explorer going to deal with it? Is it done in Photoshop? Is it done in layered Photoshop? Or did they flatten it into a JPEG and now you can no longer get a hold of the designer? Was it done in Illustrator? Does it have to be converted to JPEG? All those questions need to come up in that client-centered approach so you can communicate clearly with them. And here's my favorite question. Can you do a flat rate? And I want to address this in my business paradigm, and hopefully you'll get it as well. Yes, I can do a flat rate. And what I do is I get an estimate of how many hours it will take, base my hourly rate on that, and then double it for a flat rate. One of the things I would say probably about 75, 80% of the time, I send a proposal, it's all agreed with, it's all signed, and about halfway through they say, oh, the equivalent of, oh, I want to build this new wing in the house, and you knew there was going to be a basement, right? It's not in the blueprint. It's okay, we can do that. Here are how many hours I estimate, and because you wanted a basement and we didn't build the foundation that way, we're going to have to kind of redo the foundation and build the basement. And either they go, no problem, it was really important. I have my signed document and the basement is not there. Or, whoa, that's too expensive. And then we figure out what to do with that. A flat rate often involves someone expecting something done and not to spend any more money. And one of the things I'll tell you, and one of the things I will address in this hour or half hour or in the 4 minutes remaining, and oh, I'm done. And what in the next hour is how to deal with budgetary constraints and how to communicate budget to a client. The $1 million question. I'm going to go back to me because I like seeing me there. Hold on a second. Where am I? All right. Technology issues. All right. Are we back to me? Are we back to me?
Yes.
Good. Hello, everybody. This is what I look like. Remember, if you just came in, I'm much more exciting than a PowerPoint presentation. You know,
and a lot more fun.
Exactly. You know, a lot of new clients hem and haw about what I'm telling them. And this is an important question to ask. You might want to ask it in your own way, but I'd say a large percentage of the time I ask a client this question. Let's say their business does $200,000 a year. It's a very small business, but they've been at it for years and they want a web presence. I ask them, if your website was just an orange in the middle of the screen, it was making you $3 million a year, would you change it? And they go, no, I wouldn't change it at all. Are you kidding? I'm like, great. Let's find out what works. Because in that case, the orange works. Who cares if you have bells and whistles and Facebook and Twitter and video and flash animation, which Apple.
Erik, we lost your audio.
Am I back?
Oh yeah, you're back. Yes.
Okay. Where do we get cut off?
But like for the last 4 seconds.
Okay, yep. Okay, here we are.
Yeah, kind of.
The thing is, how do we create a solution that's actually going to expand your ROI, the return on your investment? So the next thing I'll try to communicate with them is what a website does. And so, Carlos, I want to have a dialogue with you. What does a website do? What do you think? What do you think a website does?
Oh, so you're asking me, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, a website is a way to present information in an interactive way. It works both ways. Right. And it's also something that I consider to be a live product or a live entity that is non-static and and this, especially in this day and age, should not have any flash on it.
Yeah. Wow.
From my standpoint.
Well, that's great. I'm done here. Thank you, Carlos. No, that was very good. That was very good. A live entity is a very good way to put it. A website is a business. Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I forgot that one.
It's a portal into a business. Now, the reality is there are a lot of different business models. For example, I have a client, if you go to wellwearjackets.com, their business is they created a particular kind of sweater that has chemotherapy ports in the arm and in the pocket, etc. So that when a person is going through chemotherapy or dialysis, they can get all the tubes in without having to cut holes in a shirt and pick it up. And it's nice and warm. When patients are sitting there a long time, they get cold. And what they want to do is sell their jackets. That's the main thing. And of course, they have a charity side of it where if chemotherapy patients can't afford jackets, people can donate on the site. But their business on their website, if you go to wellwearjackets.com, is to sell those jackets. I have another client called the Madoff Recovery Initiative, madoffrecovery.com. Okay, that is a company run by a PR firm in New York whose sole directive is to communicate with people who got ripped off in the Bernie Madoff scandal. I don't know if you guys in Mexico had heard about this man who stole a lot of money.
Say again, in the what?
The Bernie Madoff scandal.
I haven't heard it.
It was a man who had something called a Ponzi scheme. And he stole many millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars from investors. And it was in big headlines in the United States. And he was put in jail. But this site is solely aimed at recovering the money and letting everybody who lost money know where the money is and when they can hope to recoup their investment. They're not selling anything, but they are dealing with many millions and billions of dollars. Does any of this money go through the website? No. Their purpose is to be purely informational on one hand, and to be purely legal on the other hand, to let people know, the legal standards and the legal sort of constraints of getting the money returned and what judges' decisions were made, et cetera. These are two completely different businesses. So, that's the first thing to look at. So, another thing my clients should know, and this is something that came up probably about 5-6 years ago, and it's something that I now address right away. I don't know if you ever saw the Kevin Costner film Field of Dreams. There was this whispering through the movie, if you build it, they will come. Remember that? If you build it. So he builds a field and then all the old players come. In web, if you build it, they won't necessarily come. Just because you have a website up there doesn't mean you're going to get web traffic. So I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, I built a site for a client and the client called in 3 days, furious. He said, why isn't my site listed on Google? Well, you're a real estate site in Los Angeles, and there are thousands of realtors in Los Angeles who are paying $10 a click on Google AdWords or more because they're selling $3 million homes and it's worth $10 for a click, and they've had sites up for 15 years. Why should your site be listed ahead of theirs? Well, I didn't put it to them that way, but that was the underlying message I gave him. Just because you build it doesn't mean, and I use the analogy of a store. If you put $500,000 into a store, and I'm from New York City, so let me use the New York metaphor. And if you put the store in a little alleyway in Brooklyn, okay, you probably won't get that many customers. It could be a brilliant store, but until people start talking about you, word of mouth, people aren't going to set foot in your store. Then again, if you build that store for the same amount of money, but you put it on Madison Avenue, where there are thousands and thousands of people producing foot traffic every day, you're going to get customers. But the real estate price for that store is going to cost you something. And that investment needs to go into SEO and SEM, needs to go into Google AdWords and into social networks. And it's so vital these days to communicate with a client early on. And I tell them, given the size of your site, it's probably going to cost as much to advertise your site as it was to build your site. Again, I do medium to, boutique to medium sites. But my guess is, when you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar site, there are people full-time whose sole job it is to deal with SEO, SEM, Google AdWords, and social networks. And within that framework, because a website is a business, okay, I let them know that if I build that store, let's say it's on Madison Avenue, and I'm like, okay, the store is built. I don't have to go there anymore. I don't have to deal with it anymore. And you're the owner, you're going to lose a lot of money and you're going to be closed within about 2 weeks. Okay? I tell them a website, because it's your business, needs to be treated like your business. And the clients of mine who are most successful with their web presence are constantly adding fuel to the fire of their website. They're constantly saying, hey, can you post this to the site? I wrote an article. Can you post this here? I created a new product. Can we renew our Google AdWords campaign? Or can we up the budget? They're constantly investing their time, money, and resources in their site because their site is a business. And it really doesn't matter if they're selling a product. If they're just disseminating information, sometimes you don't need to spend as much time on it. But if you have users that interact with the site at all, it's vital not to leave your store alone. So 99% of the time, the budget for that store is ongoing, for that web presence is ongoing. It's at that point I find out if they really do have the budget to do a website. I'd say because of the way I deal with clients, I have a pretty good success rate with moving forward with a website once I talk to them. And let me explain why. Everything I just told you about, I consult with a person on for free. And I really spend the time, effort, love, and energy. And I do everything I'm going to talk about today, I actually do for free. And I go, whoa, yeah. But here's what happens is, I say when I'm done, I hand them a proposal, I have them a web map, and I say, hey, if you go with our company, here's the budget, here's what we estimate, great. If not, God bless you. Take that web map, take that proposal to someone else, and good luck with you. And I'd say about 40% of the people who go elsewhere come back to me in about 6 months and say, I used an Indian team. They're halfway done the site. Can you finish it for me? And you know what I tell them? No, we're starting over. I went through all this effort. You tried to save 40% on your website. You've doubled your budget, and now you're nowhere. So I try to let them know that pretty quickly off. So at that point,
quick question, Eric, real quick. I'm sorry, but before I forget it. So how does that apply also to software engineering?
I would say yes. I mean, give me an example of a client of yours, or it can be a theoretical client or a real client, depending whether you want to use real information or not, who's approached you about a project.
Well, from our experience, what we normally do when we engage with a suspect or a prospect is we try to learn about their pains, right? So one of the pains, very often, more often than not, is going to be definitely their experiences with Indian teams or faraway teams from anywhere in the world. And so these types of issues could be, as you mentioned, from cultural nature or language or time zone, whatever. So we never, I mean, not that I know of, maybe there's someone in the audience or one of the principals here that might know better, but I don't think that we're going to take code built or created elsewhere and then we're going to rework it here, So that's what I can tell you. Yeah. And as from a non-engineering standpoint, because my role is different. So, but that's pretty much what the experience that we had is. We start from literally from scratch, working with the client.
Right. Great. Well, here's a question. Give me an example of a software development project that you guys did.
Meaning,
for example, we developed Dungeon Hunter 5 app for the iPhone and Android. We developed it, coded it, did the UI for it, got it on iTunes, advertised it, and budgeted for 6 months of upkeep.
Okay.
That's a software development thing. So, I mean, again, you can give me a theoretical, or you can give me a real example if your client, didn't mind.
Well, actually, what I can use, what I would like to use is a real example in terms of one of the things that we're working on, which is we call it the planning poker, which is an application that was developed by our people here, and it's used in Scrum type of meetings, and for agile methodologies, so for planning, for estimating, and things like that. And it's a product of our own, of that the company owns. So that's one of the things that my coworkers here are working on, and very brilliantly. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're promoting very heavily. And as far as clients, well, we have clients in the travel industry and also the healthcare industry with software products. So there's a broad array of possibilities.
Great. So let's take someone in the healthcare industry. I come from a medical family, so it's something I'll be able to address. Give me an example of something from the healthcare industry, a product that someone might need that requires software development, and I'll address exactly how I think it might apply to the paradigms I've brought up so far.
Okay. Perhaps. From whatever little knowledge I have on the subject, okay, and what I do know is that the folks here have developed software for, let's say, for keeping track of how a patient is evolving and doing, these types of applications are developed for different media like. Tablets, etc., mobile.
Great. So let's create a product.
Okay.
A doctor wants a tablet application that could communicate directly with the new Affordable Healthcare Directive to have all clients' charts digital. So when the doctor goes in, he does this on his tablet, and it automatically syncs with that patient's file that is stored for the government.
Right.
And so here's the issue. He's going to ask you how much it will cost to do that. And your answer would inevitably, well, let's see what the API, the Advanced Programming Interface for the Affordable Care Act software packages, and then let's figure out what do you really want to put on this tablet. And he'll say this, that, and the other, and then we'd ask, are you the only one who's going to use it? No, we have a team of 23 doctors. Great. Everyone's going to need a login, right? Yes. And then you try to figure it out. And the question would be always, why do you need this? Why do you need this application? And how is it going to work for you? And they say, well, quite honestly, my patients right now write everything down in a chart, and we only have, we can only afford 2 assistants. And they're spending their entire day typing what we write in the chart in the computer system instead of actually helping us deal and manage with patients. Okay? So, if they ask you, yeah, we want you guys to do it in what, is C++ still pretty ubiquitous, or is there another language that you use for C++?
I would say it's an object-oriented programming language.
Oh, yeah. If they're asking you about the technology, say we want it done in this technology, we have to address that. They said we got to have one done in India to address that. If they said, I had someone design the user interface for us, like I said, for this site. You'd have to look at it and go, okay, did they design it? Is it scalable to the new iPad Pro? Can I look at it on my iPhone? Do you need it on an iPhone? You're going to ask all the same questions. It's just not going to be web-based. It's going to be software development related. But the first thing we have to do as developers is address a client and find out why do they need this solution for their business, and do they have any illusions about what they need that aren't necessarily directed toward their business or in getting an ROI. And third of all, if you're going to do a software package at a flat rate, I would double my estimate.
Okay.
Same questions, same addressing. Again, I would tell them, if I put an orange in the middle of your screen and you were to, just walk into a patient, give a full exam, and then just hit that orange and all the stuff were to be online, would you do it? And you go, yeah. So basically, don't bug me about the technology, okay?
Okay.
What we want to do is we want to address how we can solve your business problem using software development or a website.
Okay. Erik, I'd like to just briefly I'd like to briefly pause for 1 second just to ask the audience if you happen to have any questions for Erik. And guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can simply click on be part of the conversation, and then another window is going to pop up where you can post your questions right there, or you can just ping me on Skype, and I'll be more than happy to read them to Erik. So if you're listening and if you have any questions, please, now's the time. So that's a question right there that I just posted.
Great. Here's a question that asked: How does organic AdWords stack up against organic content marketing in terms of driving meaningful traffic to a website? That's a really good question. And it goes directly back to when I brought up an issue that a client brought up. Hey, why isn't my site on Google? Google has two different ways of driving traffic to your website. One is organic search engine optimization and marketing. The other one is Google AdWords. If you go to Google, you'll find that there are three areas, excuse me. One is an area in the middle, okay? One is doing this from your perspective, and another is an area on the right side. The areas on the top here and on the right side are Google AdWords areas. What you do is you set up an ad campaign with Google, and you set up a daily budget. And that daily budget could be $5, $10, $20, $100 a day. And you will create ads, and those ads will be linked to specific keywords. For example, I have a company that sells high-end fruit baskets. So maybe you want the keyword holiday fruit baskets, the keyword organic apples, organic oranges, and you want those keywords to hit. The most immediate return you're going to have is if you set up a Google AdWords campaign. Those will show up immediately. You set up your ads, you set up your daily budget, you make sure that there's a daily minimum bid, and the instant you put your credit card in there and all the information and go boop, your Google AdWords campaign will start. And if you've set your keywords in your ads to be enticing, if someone types in fruit, gift fruit basket, you will come up on the first page of Google, either on the top there or on the right side for Google AdWords. And the way this stacks up against the organic search, I'll explain later. But I wanted to make sure you knew what that was. The organic Google search you can't pay for. Google made its initial web presence and its initial money learning to be relevant. And this is what I mean. Many, many years ago, but probably around 2000, 2001, you'd have a porn site that had keywords that say a business investment, double your money, and they would have some copy optimized for a business. It would rank high on Google. A person would click on it, and they go to a site that they really didn't want to see. So Google said, all right, this is not good for our business, because that person went where they didn't want to go. And you know what? They might go to Yahoo or Excite or the other search engines and directories, because Google's keywords were not relevant to what they were actually searching for. So Google has created new algorithms, especially over the past 2 years. There's the Penguin algorithm and the Panda algorithm, to make sure that that the content of a site is relevant to the search terms. And this takes time and effort and something called backlinking. It can often take 3 to 6 months after you launch a site. But if you have a team of really, really skilled, dedicated people who are working every day to helping your site stay optimized, stay relevant, and get linked back from other sites, you can rise in the organic searches. Now, to address the question directly, how does AdWords stack up against organic? Here's a fact. When you go to Google, the first thing you probably look at is the organic search, the stuff in the middle. And if your website is in the top 10, especially in the top 3 or 4, it's going to stack up much better than AdWords. But it takes time. The results are not guaranteed. And if you need, for example, I have a company that needs to sell fruit baskets before the holiday season, and they're just getting their site up. The organic search stacks up very poorly against AdWords because they need it now. So what they've done is they set a $10 a day budget. I'm going to suggest that they up it during prime time so that people hit their site over and over and over and over again through Google AdWords. But after January, when their harvest is done and they're getting ready for the following year, let's get up a Google campaign, a Google organic SEO, SEM campaign, so that by next year at this time, they're already way high and they don't have to pay for AdWords anymore because fruit gift baskets are ranking high in the organic, and also because people look there more. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Good, good.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's relevant. So that's kind of, we're working a little bit of that, content marketing and such.
Yeah,
so,
and we do that. It's seventhplanet.net. We are a full website solution. I don't send people somewhere else to get their SEO, SEM, or to get their AdWords, or to get the site coded or anything else. We do it all in-house. So even social media marketing, which is sometimes almost more useful than Google, depending on what your business is. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. No, thank you, Eric. Do we have any more questions by anyone here in the audience? So remember that now's the time. We still have a few minutes left, so please, by all means, feel free to either ping me or just share them here in the Q&A section here on the Hangout.
I'm on about slide 5 of 10. So
absolutely, sure.
And if a question comes in, great. And if not, no big deal. Now, here's something that came up recently, and I think it's really important to discuss with a client. A client may need a big site, may think they need a big site, but it may be that they're going to spend all their money on that site and it's going to be a complete bust. Here's what I recommend, that we think short-term and long-term and create the minimum viable solution for a client. Let me tell you what that means. I have a client that wants to create an educational solution so that a number of different professional specialists in the learning disability field, tutors, teachers, neurologists, dyslexia specialists, can all communicate about one child and then look at each other's data, because right now there's no solution for that. Okay, if a parent has a child with dyslexia, the tutor doesn't know what the neurologist results are. The neurologist doesn't know where the kid is in school. And they also need this site to be HIPAA compliant, HIPAA compliant, so that child's information is secure and nobody else can hack into it. Now, I could build them a $200,000 solution that will do all that, but I don't think that's in my client's best interest. What's in my client's best interest is to find out if people actually want that.
Okay, makes sense.
We've got this great idea. Do people want this? Well, how is she going to get a third-party investor to put up the money if we don't even know how it's, what people or parents, et cetera, think? So, my suggestion in this is to create something like, it's called a minimum viable product. Create a one-page landing page with its subscribe button that looks great, that tells clients, that tells people, hey, this is what our company is. If you're interested in this, subscribe now. We'll let you know. And then do an A/B testing, have 2 landing pages, put them up, and figure out, okay, which one is working better, which one is getting more results, and then put together a Google AdWords campaign, which, as I mentioned, is immediate. Get people to those pages and see if it's getting lots and lots and lots and lots of interest. That is something that'll give the client a lot of confidence, won't cost them more than a couple $1,000s to do, and will really pique the interest of investors. Because if, let's say 20,000 people see the ad and 15,000 people sign up, wow, that's a 75% success rate. Imagine how many more people, will have that interest. So in terms of a client solution, I, as a web developer, do not just jump to take their money. And here's why. Because again, as I said earlier, I'm on a referral business. I take a client-centered approach. I have a client who has a jewelry business in Los Angeles, and I created a site for them. And when I created it for them, they were 90% in-store, 10% web sales. And when I'm talking about their products, they're selling, $20,000 Rolex watches and antique jewelry. In fact, I got my wife's wedding band there. Now they're 80% web-based, 20% in-store. And that to me is as good as gold. My client can tell people, this guy, Erik, he totally changed my business paradigm. Get a website from him. So not only did I serve this client and probably, help him put a lot away for his 401k, but I also ensured that I would, that my business would continue getting referrals. And it's a client, and I'll add to that, in that minimum viable product, we should have analytics. How many people are hitting the pages? How many people are actually, subscribing? Are we going to have a beta launch? And let's say it doesn't work at all. Can we put something else up on the page that might pique people's interest? These are ways to go, right? All right, let's see if we have any more questions. No. Ask your questions, people. I'm giving you valuable
There
information.
you go. Ask away.
Ask away.
Yeah, well, there, give it some thought. And here's one that I'd like to ask you myself. Have you ever, tell us about, I mean, if applicable, tell us about the time when you had to fire a client and how you handle it.
Oh, yeah.
How you handle that.
Well, that's an interesting thing. One of the things I've always known, and I've known this since about I was a year in it, when you take on a client, you take on their life. And what I mean by that is you take on, you deal with their personality, you deal with their problems. If they're getting divorced, that somehow gets into the communication, even if they're working for a big company trying to be professional. It's sort of, it floats there. The way I have it is I have very clear boundaries. I try to be very easy to get along with, and I try to communicate where those boundaries are. I had to let go of a client a while ago because he was more trouble than he was worth. I'll tell you what I mean by that. In a design sense, when we were done with the site, we were on budget. We spent another month and a half having him send me emails like, move this 1 pixel over, move that 1 pixel over. No, I want this down, I want this up. I'm like, I'll give him a name, Fred. Fred, that's not what's in the design. He said, yeah, but I think it'll look better. So, I have no problem with it. Even after launch, he was change this, change that, change that. Well, there's only a certain amount of responsibility I will take for liability on my part for not doing what I promised. But when it came time to send that person a bill, they said, oh, what's this for? I said, well, I spent 2 hours making these changes. No, these weren't changes. I said, no, they weren't actually asked for. And it came a back and forth and a back and forth and a back and forth and just a complete resentment all around. And I finally said, you know what, Fred, I don't think this is going to work out. I think, I made a bunch of promises. Here what was on paper, here what was on here. And he said, you're charging me for telephone time? I said, well, it's in the contract, project management time. If you spend more than 5 minutes with me on the phone, you get billed, a partial billing cycle, because these are times I could be spend working. And after a few encounters like that, I just said, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. If you give me, half of what you owe me, I'll send you a DVD of all your web files, and you can go find someone else. And that's the way it went. Some people cost more than you make, and some people are never going to be happy no matter what you present to them. However, I will say this. I have clients who are totally a pain in the neck, and I have no problem with that. I have a client who I won't have spoken with in 4 months, and they'll just say, this isn't working. Signed, Don. This isn't working. Like saying my daily blog isn't working. And I'll be like, oh, hi, I'm just making up this name, Don. What's the matter with your daily blog? Oh, it's the font is messed up. So I'll go back and forth. They're grumpy. I'm like, hi, Don, how are you? Just nothing. But you know what? They appreciate what I do. They always come to me, and you know what? They pay on time. So I have no problem with it. The biggest issue is managing expectations and finding those clients who, no matter what you do, you can't manage their expectations, and those people can't stay. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. The other one is when clients are really, really late with payments, and I give them an ultimatum, and if they can't meet the ultimatum, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But I find that most people are reasonable, and especially when you create something that helps their business, you know?
Okay, well, we're having this conversation with Erik Passoja. He's talking about his client-centered approach to web development, and we're approaching the final part of the broadcast. So, having said this, if Erik, if you could share one major piece of insight or relevant piece of insight for our people here, whoever's going to be either watching now or watching at a later time, what sort of advice would you give web developers and software engineers in terms of how to best approach clients when they're in general? What would be like the best piece of advice you could give them?
That's a good question. I'd say two things, and the first one is something I mentioned earlier: communication. Start to evolve your communication such that you meet expectations and ideally exceed expectations. Okay, so and in that, you want to be as honest and transparent as possible. And in other words, if you say something is going to be blue, make it blue. If you say it's going to cost $20,000, it should cost $20,000. But ideally, it should cost $15,000 because you're going to have a very happy client. So you want to communicate very clearly. The second thing is, and this may not seem obvious to everybody, get it in writing. Here's what I mean. I'm gonna share my screen again with you while we wind this down. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Boom. Nope, that's not what I want. This. I'm gonna skip competition now. Are we hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay,
we can see that.
Here's what I mean by getting it in writing, and this is very, very important. You want to create a web flow, and if you're a software developer, a development flow that represents a clear and indisputable agreement between the developer and the client. I liken this to a blueprint. Get it in writing. You should have all your site content and functionality. And I personally do this part for free. Let me give you an example. Here is a web flow. Okay, this was for well-wear jackets. It shows in each box is a different page. Okay, we have a bunch of deliverables that the client signs off in. This is a simple version. This one for digital transitions, it was like a 23-page one that had web boxes and flows. Very, very clear with my client. Okay. The next thing I do is I put together, if necessary, probably with software development, you want to do this every time in writing, a technical specification document. Might not be necessary with small websites, but you want to get a budget, you want to get deliverables, you want to get functional requirements, client, designers, developers, and you want to, and if you do create a tech spec document, I suggest that that's not a free part of the consultation, that's billable, because that takes hours and hours and hours. And it should be so explicit that there's no question and no dispute when you're done with a project as what do you, and finally, create a proposal. Build a template through experience as you do things back and forth. Through experience, what I mean is I have a clause in there that says we will guarantee it being free for bugs for 2 weeks after launch. After 2 weeks, we bill at our hourly rate. So that 6 months later, I don't get an email, hey, this isn't working, hey, we don't expect to be charged for it. And that happened a few times until I finally went, you know what, can't happen. But make it clear. Get explicit definitions, what the deliverables are, both on the client and the developing side, what the timing is, when you're going to deliver a draft of the site, when you're going to deliver the front end, when you're going to deliver, the HTML, etc. Break down the work by hours. Clients love this. They say, oh, the HTML template is going to take 16 hours. The logo is going to take 9 hours to develop, et cetera, et cetera. Break it all down. And then finally, put together an estimate. Get a retainer up front. Get a retainer up front. Get a retainer up front to make sure that it was worth your time if your client falls off the face of the earth. If you're done with a site and you've got a 50% retainer and you never find your client again, at least you got paid half of what you were expecting instead of nothing. And get their signature and initials on each page just so that you can completely and utterly have it. You know what? A handshake is nice, but I found that it's not enough because the expectations are on paper, so the client knows what they were looking at. Communication, okay, and get it on paper. Those are the two most important things I could communicate to you. Well, I lost you. Are you with me?
No, yeah, I'm sorry. I was on mute.
Oh,
I was on
okay.
mute. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, we have another question by the audience,
Yeah.
and they're about what you were just explaining. How will this work in an agile environment? It's right there on the Q&A section.
Give me 1 second here. Well, if Agile is just it's an alternative to project management. I think it's going to work in any project management environment. The question is, and I say this about anything in life. I say this about martial arts. I say this about religion. I say this about web design. I'd say this about acting. Nothing works. For example, capitalism doesn't work. You have to work it. Kung Fu doesn't work. You have to work it. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Jainism doesn't work. You have to work it. If you have a client-centered approach in an agile environment, you are working it. If you're just trying to let the environment do it for you, it won't. Your project management solution is just a tool. If I show up with the best hammer in the world to a construction job and I sit there, smoke cigarettes and drink coffee all day, it's not going to build anything. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it certainly does to me.
I don't have any experience with the agile environment, so I can't tell you. I do have a kind of a cognitive overview of it, but I will tell you, if you work in an agile environment and you don't communicate, manage expectations, or have things in writing, you're going to find you're going to have troubles in the long run. And if you do have those three things, you're way ahead, and you could probably do your project management on a piece of paper and be fine.
Okay. Well, I hope that has answered your question to the audience. All right, Erik. Unfortunately we need to wrap it up because we're about to close it.
Oh, thank heavens!
So yeah, your suffering is going to come to an end.
Well, I hope I help people. I hope there was something that.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're being part of something, to be honest. I mean, you're being part of this initiative, this concept that we're working on, which involves a lot of things. Involves communication, involves cultural awareness, involves a whole bunch of things. So you and I are going to be in touch, and I want to really thank you on behalf of myself and my coworkers and everybody here at Nearsoft and whoever else is going to be watching. And like I said, we're going to be sending you a couple of tokens of appreciation for your time and your experience. And there's nothing else for me to say other than a deep thank you, and we look forward to having you again in the future.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Nearsoft, and thank you, viewers. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.